Welcome everybody to our afternoon breakout session. Nothing succeeds like success, how to start and maintain a healthy theme camp and thrive or survive as a camp lead. We're happy that you've joined us today for this breakout session. My name is Peta Mama Bear, and I am your host today. And I'm also a volunteer for camp support. I'm also a lead for Fafa Camp. You can find us in the 430 sector, and I look forward to all of you stopping by and participating in our spontaneity and our shenanigans. We are really excited about this topic. We've got some great panelists for you today, but before we get started, I'd love for y'all to just introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're from, your camp. And then if you have anything that you're hoping to learn today, sometimes that helps us inform us as what we're going to be speaking about. So just in the chat there, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, that would be really great. All right, I'm not seeing anything happening in the chat. Here we go. Here we go. All right, here we go. Excellent. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. I'm requiring some participation. Okay, so as I mentioned, I am your host today, and I'm going to introduce our panelists for today for this particular breakout session. Molly McButter, or otherwise known as McButter, is the unofficial mayor of the Costco Soul Trading Outlet, a camp of 42 people. Burning since 2018, she enjoys getting dusty in far and wide places, and she is based in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Welcome, McButter. Roadhouse is the camp lead of Hex Collective, a large international camp of roughly 50 to 65% virgins each year. 2023 will be his 10th consecutive burn, and he's participated in multiple symposium panels and loves to help fellow burners, especially TCOs, any way he can. Based in Redondo Beach, California, he has a love for music, food, the outdoors, and entrepreneurship. And welcome to Roadhouse. And next we have Love. Love has been a camp lead every year that she's gone to the burn, 2015 to 2019, for camps ranging from 21 close friends to being the mayor of a 5-camp, 138-person village. Herding cats and spreadsheets are two of her favorite things, and she's always thrilled to talk about all things management, organization, and Burning Man. I also want to introduce our chat moderator. So the way that we handle questions in question and answers in this breakout session is if you have questions, put them in the chat. And at the end of the session, or about an hour in, we will, our chat moderator, who is Cheese, who is joining us from St. Paul, Minnesota. And he is a camp lead for Shady Asylum, providing refreshing 60-foot oasis of shade and sensual, toe-wiggling, dewy green grass. How do you do that out there?
A lot of work.
So Cheese will be collecting your questions, and then during the question and answer time, we'll be reading the questions out. And then we also have our tech moderator, who today is Puppy, helping us with all the tech things for putting this on. And he is joining us from the island of Oahu. And he's the founder of the Religious as Fuck Camp and is a volunteer on the Camp Network team. So welcome, everybody. All right, so let's get started. So let's say you want to start a new camp. What are some of the first steps when you're thinking about starting a new camp? So I thought I might ask Love first, because I know that you've started quite a few new camps, and maybe focusing a little bit on the importance of the why of the camp. the who of the camp and the what of the camp. So go for it.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. When starting a new camp, I tend to like to start with organization. I personally outline my timeline, all of my important dates so that I know it and that anybody who joins my camp can know. I'll spin up a spreadsheet and have that as my first tab. And then I start thinking about the why. Why do I want to start a camp? Why do we want to start a camp? The why really matters. It's the thing that bonds everybody together. What is the thing that you're trying to do? What matters most to you? How are you going to measure your success? Like, what are the things that you really want to achieve? The big goals, the top priorities. Prioritization is kind of important in this process. Right now, my current camp is going through an ideation phase where we're throwing all ideas out there for this month, and then we're going to narrow it down so that we can focus our time and our energy, and everybody has buy-in because we're all talking through that process. And then making sure that you're meeting the timelines that are required for placement applications and things like that that exist within the Burning Man organization, but also your own timelines around how to structure things that make it workable for you. I like to do monthly camp meetings at the minimum, maybe twice a month, especially in the summer, as you're getting closer to the event. And those can be on Zoom, especially for anybody who's remote or far afield. They can be in person for anybody who lives nearby you. It's nice to bring everybody together on a regular basis. And then really honing in on what is it that you're trying to achieve in terms of your gifting or your theme. So what's the purpose? What's pulling everybody together? What's the thing that you're gonna like say to everybody that's like, this is what we're doing this year? And that can be anything. That's the beautiful thing about Burning Man. It can be anything you want. So really having a clear idea of what you want to do helps a lot when you're trying to recruit, when you're navigating the what do we prioritize conversations of time and effort and money. And it helps you kind of make a clear statement for everybody to rally around as well.
Awesome. McButter or Roadhouse, would you like to add anything to this idea of starting a new camp? Yeah. Yes or no? Unmute? No. Okay. I just wanted to add about the who and the what and the why. Our camp has been together for about 13 years. And that is how we actually started out this year with our first meeting. So even if you're kind of a continuing camp, it feels like this is a good thing to kind of remind us why we do everything that we do. And not only for the leads, but for the whole camp. So just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah. I would just jump in and say, so Costco's been around since 1998. So this will be our 25th year. We did have a couple meetings that were very logistics focused recently. And then all of a sudden we were like, wait, let's talk about why we want to do this. And we just had a great ending conversation. We're like, oh yeah, like it's so important to remind yourself of why you do it, and why you're, doing spreadsheets and forms and organizing and things. Like it's a really good reminder. So I second that 100%.
Yay. Yeah. And it worked really well for us too, I just have to say. So when you're thinking about adding camp members, I wanted to open up another question about how do you vet new campers? Do you have a limit? Do you have a percentage limit? And I know that a number of you, all of you, have some input into this. So just actually, let's start with Roadhouse. Talk about your vetting process. Talk about your percentage of newbies and how you deal with that.
Yeah, thank you. So Hex Collective is kind of an acculturation camp. So we tend to lean heavily in towards new burners. So any given year, rough average of newbies is about 65 to 75, sometimes pushing 80%. And we're about 100 strong. So it's a sizable amount of newbies, but we've created a vetting system. And essentially the way it works is when we open general applications for our camp online, people submit a fairly long questionnaire. And then 2 of our veterans reach out and set up kind of like a Zoom call or a connection point. And they basically just get to meet the person, share expectations, um, and then kind of pass the torch on to the second vetter. And so if it's a yes, yes, the person's admitted. If it's a yes, no, we bring in a third veteran for a touch as a tiebreaker. And what it's really done is help kind of curate our community, but also ensure that the people that are coming, which are mostly abroad, we have a large international base, are just real clear about what they're getting themselves into and what camp expects. We're a contributory based camp, so everyone's got to pull their weight and do work and have shifts in the offering. So it's there's a lot of moving parts. So we find that this vetting system really helps our camp because we deal with such a large international base of new burners, kind of manage all of it. And once we're on Playa, everyone's real clear and expectations have been made. It just makes it really nice and clean. So that's just how we do it.
Cool. Anyone else want to add?
I can jump in. So Costco Soulmate Trading Outlet is focused on helping people meet their soulmate somewhere on the playa. And part of the key piece of this process is doing interviews. Now, we interview people to better understand them so we can put them into our patented algorithm for matching. But that means we go pretty deep, pretty fast, particularly with the stresses of the playa. So we have a very similar process, I think, to Hex Collective in that we try to ensure that the people are prepared for having some really deep conversations and that they're ready to hold space for people. And also that they know how to take care of themselves in those situations, because you can have beautiful, it's not all negative, but with the extremes of the environment, you naturally have some extreme conversations. And so we do interviews with campmates after also a long form and make sure that everybody's aware of kind of what's happening and how, what the expectations are on both sides.
Both of you mentioned interviews and questions, and I think Roadhouse, you mentioned about talking about expectations. Could you maybe dive a little bit deeper into that as to like what kind of questions are you asking, or what's happening in that interview a little bit more?
Sure, yeah. When we first kind of launched the vetting program, the questions were pretty independent, but now we kind of have a more formulaic script approach. But everything from, have you ever camped before? Like, what's your camping experience? Because many of our campers are tent campers, and as many of you know, tent camping out there, especially if you don't have the right gear, can be a big, can make a big difference in your burn, whether how you show up and the amount of rest that you're able to get and things like that. So it can be as practical as, do you have camping experience? What kind of gear do you have? Also, what are their expectations? Like, what do they expect camp to be for them? What do they expect the burn to be for them? And then really just outlining that, because we don't have any paid teams, everyone helps with strike, for example. So it's an all hands on approach, and we don't really, I want to say we don't permit people leaving early, but we really kind of frown against it because it can create a snowball effect. If someone leaves early, it's like all of a sudden everyone else has to go. But really, running a theme camp is about giving, bottom line. And Burning Man would be a much different event without the theme camps that support it. And it's a constant reminder that the reason that we're out there is it should be, at least in my opinion, selfless. It's about the gift and the greater good and showing up and sprinkling our stardust on the experience for those that happen to stop by, and also about being a good just burner and sticking to the ethos and picking up trash, even if you're outside of camp, and just just those types of things. So the question there is fairly long. The conversations typically run 60 to 90 minutes per touch. And so they're fairly in depth, but that's kind of a baseline. If you need more specific examples, I'm happy to share, but I don't necessarily know that that's necessary, but I'll try and grab the form and maybe I can post it in the chat for people.
Great. And Roadhouse, can you just share how many people are in the Hex Collective? Generally, how many total in the campers?
Our community, I think, is pushing 500 or 600 worldwide, but any given year we're about 100. I think the most that we've been up to is 125, but that gets a little bit, it's just a different camp feel. So we try and keep it capped at 100.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's just, once you get bigger than that, it's, you start walking around camp and you don't really know people. There's a kind of a missing connection, and we really try hard. We have an opening ceremony, for example, and a closing ceremony. And the purpose of that is just to relay information, but also as a team building exercise, if you will. We found that the tighter the community is any given year on the playa, just the smoother things go in general. So if people feel connected, if they feel accountable, or that they're being held accountable and responsible, and they take pride in their contribution, I've found over the years that people show up more. So if they have a voice, if they have a hand in building something, they're proud of it, they want to share it, they want to be around, and they really want to embrace the whole experience. So
Great. Thank you. Thanks. Love, do you want to add anything about vetting? And
Yeah, I will say that I'm really intentional about camp population kind of from the start as myself as a lead. I know I've talked to many people about their experiences with different sized camps. I've now had experience running different sized camps, as small as 21 friends and as large as 138 people in a village spread between 5 different camps and everything in between. I will say that in the process of I use a Google form for initial interest. It's an easy way to be like, oh, you're interested in the camp? Great, fill out this form. I use a non-friend vetting process where, like, generally speaking, most of the people in my smaller camps will have heard about the camp from a friend that is in the camp. And that's great. I want more friends in the camp. That's awesome. And I want someone who isn't your friend to vet you in the camp process. I think that's really valuable and important. As friends, we often take things for granted. We forget to ask certain questions. We go a lot on vibe. And then what happens to that camper if that friendship isn't as strong, or, having a non-friend sponsor really helps build that community within the camp so that you have more than one person to go to, so that you've built an invested relationship with somebody that isn't just your main point of contact friend. And I think the questions tend to be kind of relative to the theme of your camp. Generally speaking, that really helps. The why really helps kind of focus what questions you're going to ask. In terms of participation and engagement, I am really clear about my expectations. I think it's really helpful to people if you set clear expectations for what success looks like for all of your campers. If you're coming with us, this is what we're expecting of you. And I want you to agree to that from the very beginning, so that you have an understanding of what's going to be asked of you as part of my camp. My camp doesn't have to be your solution to Burning Man. You can camp with anybody. So I want to make sure that you're aligned with our vision and goals, so that everybody feels like they're contributing equally. And we accommodate for that in different ways, depending on where people live, when they're arriving, when they're leaving. I do ask that people stay for strike. I don't require everyone to stay for strike because some people come early. But I do try to make it feel balanced in terms of the workload. And I am mindful about percentages of my camp that are new, percentages of my camp that are staying for strike or setting up early. So I kind of try to think of how to keep the cohesive whole working well and balanced, so that it feels equitable to me and to everybody else, so that it's not just me and like 2 or 3 people doing the work, because that's not fun for anybody. and it's not as engaging. Burning Man, I love Burning Man because it's really one of the places in the world where you get out what you put in. And so if you make it reasonable and very clearly outlined what it is that you're asking for people to put in, generally I've found that they're willing to do it. They just need to know what to do, and how to do it, which is where the organization, the spreadsheets, the planning really is essential.
Great, thank you. Roadhouse, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and I didn't mention it, we also have a sponsorship program. So the idea there is that a veteran must sponsor any new campers so that there's another level of accountability. It's seemingly it's pretty easy to disappear or vanish on the playa for a week. And since we have a lot of moving parts and roles in camp, we want to make sure that people show up for them. So the sponsorship system has been really vital for our success as an acculturation camp and with a lot of newbies. And it seems to work really well because, again, there's just some level of accountability. And the worst thing that can happen is if people don't show up and other people are required to cover for them. So it's just been a nice system. It does have a little bit of flexibility there, but generally speaking, we try and have all newbies sponsored.
Great, awesome. Lev, what would you like to add?
I would say as well that acculturation starts from like the day that you start setting up your camp, because it's all about the values that you are wanting to carry forward. So communicating those clearly, not just waiting until you're on playa, but being really clear about that. I think it starts from day one. I have a list of Love's pro tips to Burning Man that I share with everybody. I'll happily share it with anybody who wants it, that I tie into the 10 principles. So they're like, these are the things that I've learned to do on playa and before and after playa. And this is how it relates to the 10 principles of Burning Man. I think that process of talking about why we're going to this place, and again, the expectations that you have as a camper, that you have as a lead, that everybody in your camp has, being really clear about what is it that you're expecting. And does that align with our mission as a camp? Does that align with our expectations for your engagement and participation? I think it's really important to have those conversations throughout the year so that as people are joining or as they're staying with your camp, keep checking in on that why. Keep checking in on the why. Why are we doing this? What's the point? What are we hoping to get out of it? What are we hoping to offer? Again, the acculturation starts from the very beginning.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. I wanted to move to another topic, and because you just started to talk about lead and leadership a bit, and talking about how talk about leadership styles or how you address the hierarchy, if you will, of the camp, of leading the camp. So I don't know who would like to go first on that one.
I can jump in.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined in 2018 and was not a camp lead, and started taking on more responsibility in 2019. And then through the lockdowns, continued getting more and more involved, so that last year I was the unofficial mayor. And you might notice it says unofficial. That's in part because we didn't want to put all the responsibility on me or one role to run the camp, right? It's about everyone's job. So we still need a point of contact, right? I know other camps sometimes have the adult in charge or the, parent of the day or whatever, right? But that responsibility needs to rotate, because there's a lot of situations, right, where you're not around or other people, and they have to be able to either make decisions or assume that things are going forward. So I would say that last year we doubled up on all of our major leadership roles because we were trying to spread more of the capabilities through the camp. And I think it wasn't actually enough. And And so this year, we're actually going to move towards more of a squad model, where we have a lead, obviously someone who knows it and who's been to Burning Man and who understands how our camp works and can advise everyone. And we're going to have the squads organized before the burn and start getting to know each other. And we think it'll really help with both on-site cohesion and our ability to communicate and get things done, as well as pre-playa getting to know each other, right? Like you'll have these pods of people who have a better knowledge about each other and are able to contact. So we've been to a couple of campfire talks and other things where people have talked about using more of a squad model. So I'm excited to use that this year and start to share more of the knowledge throughout the camp.
Thanks, McButter. Yeah, at Fafa Camp, we're going to do the squad model this year as well, and shaping up to be really great. And I can't wait to share notes.
We'll have to meet on Wednesday and see how it's going.
Yeah, right. So Roadhouse, you want to talk about your approach to the hierarchy of leadership at Hex Collective?
Yeah, thank you. So we run camp, and it's kind of changing and morphing, but essentially we kind of run it like a business. I mean, I hate to say that, but as far as structure, just due to the genetics and logistics of our camp, we just needed a lot of structure. So we have a tribal council that kind of sits at the top. They would kind of be like your board of directors. We kind of steer the ship, make major decisions, handle finances, and then under that we have usually 5 camp leads, and we have roughly 40 some odd teams. It's very granular, very transparent, so it just makes it easier for us to make sure things get done. But so essentially the way that it works is of our 40 some odd teams, we have team members, so those are the campers. Each team has a team lead, and they kind of work and deal with the camp leads, which would be above them, and then we deal as council with the camp leads. And then obviously all of us make ourselves available for certain teams, and so there's kind of it's just an easy break, but we have a very democratic camp, and the idea is if you want to do something in camp, by all means, they just need to garner a plan, and then they submit it, get support from the camp and get a team together to help, get that task done or whatever that is. So we have structure, but we're also kind of loose in terms of what can be brought each year, and we really encourage people to step up and bring their own ideas and magic to camp, so it's not so rigid. But just from a management perspective, if you're starting a new camp and you want to go big, generally it's just going to be easier with some transparency and just a lot of delineation of tasks. There's always overlap, and but generally speaking, the more granular we are, just the easier it is for us to manage. Otherwise, it just gets all snarfied and it's just messy. So,
Agree.
clear-cut expectations.
Thank you. Love, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I will say that I think I have a unique background in terms of management styles. I was a teacher for the better part of 20 years and a small business manager. I do management professionally, and so I lean heavily on that skill set. That being said, if you don't have that experience already, I tend to think about like what I would want as someone underneath me. I run my camp where I am the lead. I've co-led camps before with one other person. Our first camp, when it was our very first year and we didn't know what we were doing, there were 2 of us co-leading, but we had 2 experienced people, one who had been once and one who had been twice, as our backup leads that helped us kind of organize everything. Lean into the people with experience. You do not have to have all the answers yourself. You won't have all of the answers yourself as an individual. Lean into other people's creativity, their experience base. So I lead my camp where I'm in charge, generally speaking, but I give authority to others as being leads of projects. And I base my pods essentially on projects that we're doing in the camp. So we'll have, like a shower team, and we'll have a music team and an activities team. And there's a lead of that project base, and then there's people supporting it, so that we're leaning in on the things that people are wanting to participate in and build and do. And we're getting experienced people who know how to build some things to help lead. And that way they can share their knowledge with other people off Playa doing build days and planning days. And that way, when we get to Playa, things run really smoothly. I don't mind being responsible. I actually really enjoy it. So I set up ways to keep boundaries for myself as well, though, in that process. As being someone who is the lead, the mayor, I have a team of people that I can count on. I have a Hitchhiker's Guide to My Camp with photos of everybody who's a lead, so that when I'm not in camp, out enjoying my experience, other people know who to go to. They can find that guide in the kitchen for what to do when there's an emergency, who to talk to about the power, who to reach out to, and make it really easy. Again, if you can make it as easy as possible for people to find what they need or who they need, if you keep your space organized, if you keep your teams kind of organized, things run pretty smoothly, in my opinion, in my experiences. A lot of this comes down to the planning in advance. So do your campers know who to reach out to besides just you? You need downtime, especially as a lead. You need downtime. You've earned it. You're working right now. You're getting this information. Build that support in so that you have other people to help you beforehand, during, and after. Who's responsible for all of the things that need to happen? Be really clear about that. Who's showing up for a truckload? Who's helping to lead this project? Who's helping with strike? Get really intentional and granular, and be very clear. Spreadsheet tabs for everything.
Excellent. Roadhouse, go ahead.
Yeah, all great points, Love Wolf. I think to add to that, in my experience, like the more people know, the easier it is to run camp. So if you have a bunch of specialists and something happens, like example, last year, our shower plumbing came undone, and the pumps were running from the sinks and water was just spewing on the playa. And 6 people were standing around trying to figure out what do we do. And I happened to be, 15 feet away. So I just ran over and killed the pump and shut off the water valve. So it basically cut the water from the source. But, I would highly recommend for especially new camps and anyone in existing camps, like you don't always have to stay in your lane. Like learning a new task can be really rewarding. And the more you know out there, just the better asset you are to camp as a whole. So, generally camp leads kind of have their hands in everything, especially in the early years. So you know how everything works. But, if you're coming as a newbie and you've never been camping and you don't know how to use a ratchet strap, like a lot of these things are real foreign to people. That I think a lot of us with skills and knowledge and know-how take for granted. So I would highly encourage, mixing up your role in camp. You don't have to be the same, person in camp every year. And again, I think just the more you know, the better asset you are to camp. So just something to keep in mind.
Excellent. Thank you. I wanted to move on to thinking about transition. So we're talking a lot about how to start a new camp, but also want to include the concept of when you're in a camp and maybe part of a transition of a camp. And McButter, this is directed towards you as you took over the leadership what did you call it? Unofficially, you took over the leadership from a longtime lead. And so just talking about transitions in leadership. And again, that can be main leadership, co-leadership. But yeah, would you like to address that?
Yeah, and don't worry, it was not a hostile takeover by any means. Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, I think we found that right at the beginning of the lockdowns that a lot of our camp members were considering not coming, right, and with the 2 canceled ones. And so some of us started saying, hey, we need all this information. So all the things you're saying, Love, about camp, they weren't really written down, right? Like they were all living in the heads of our kind of founders and other folks. So we had to start extracting that information and trying to understand, what are the decisions that had been made, even what size our shade was, right? When I tried to do the camp map that last year, I was like, how big is our shade? And nobody knew, right? Like we didn't have it written down anywhere. And so there's that piece, very practical pieces. And so now we have everything newly in spreadsheets. I'm sharing it with everybody, just like Roadhouse said, like trying to get that knowledge out into the community. And then also, there's some things that we want to change, right? You come to a new leadership group and you have folks who say, hey, why do we do it that way? Can we change what's the point of view on changing that? And I think that our community overall is philosophically open to change, but also somewhat resistant to like, what's the impact on camp? Is it going to change our overall culture? And really reflecting on some of that is super important as you go along. It's been a really great experience to take on some responsibility from such an established camp. And also, there's things that we want to change and evolve, which is also exciting, but I think we're in a really good space, which is great. I'm gonna pass it over to Love.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going to say, I really believe in transparency as a lead, especially because I am the person in charge. I believe in transparency with my camp leads, my camp as a whole. So anybody in my camp can access my master plan sheet, where they can see the budget. They can see the projects that are happening and who's in charge of it all year long. And if you're leading a project of any kind, however big or small, I expect that you attend the monthly meetings. If I do more than once a month meetings, I try to be reasonable in my expectations for participation because people have lives. But if you're going to lead a project, I really want you to be at every monthly meeting so that every camp lead is hearing about the projects of one another and talking through the possible problems that arise as you're trying to get things done off Playa, and so that they can be prepared for when you're on Playa, so that even if you weren't building the shower, you were hearing about it as the kitchen lead. And so you can understand kind of what some of the problems were. So I have all of my project leads come together every month and talk through the projects. How's it going? I do check-ins. This helps support the project actually happening and getting done. And it also helps that knowledge transfer, that cross-pollination of solutioning and ideation and knowledge. Like, what is it that they're doing? You get to hear kind of things, even if it doesn't stick, even if you're not responsible for it. And again, just transparency, talking about what isn't working, trying to problem solve, and then also having that documentation that everybody can access. I keep a folder that is specifically for the camp in my Google Drive, and I share it with the campers, and I house all of my documents, all of my spreadsheets in that folder so that everybody has permissions, commenting permissions. I do not grant editing permissions to everybody. As a camp lead, I've learned better. That helps me with my sanity. That's a boundary of mine. Other people do it differently, but I love my documentation. I'm a little guarded about it. So you can see it, you can comment on it, but you can't necessarily change it the way that you want it to go. Do it on your own if you want to do that. But I do want people to see it. I want them to be able to access everything, and I want them to be able to contribute to it by commenting. And so I'm in there updating stuff. I'll check in with somebody if they leave a lot of comments and talk through making their updates if they have these great ideas. I'm all for that. So I think the more transparency that you have to, other people then can help see your weak spots, and they can help bring their knowledge and ideas to make it more refined or robust. Again, lean in to the knowledge of the people in your camp and own what you don't know. Own what your campers don't know. Lean into the discomfort of the unknown and work through those problems together.
Yeah, and I wanted to add that having this type of documentation is really helpful for succession. If you're looking at sharing leadership, and in our camp, we try not to have the same lead for a really long time, just to give other people the opportunity to step up. And having all of this type of documentation then helps, and that person doesn't have to, the new lead doesn't have to do it that way necessarily, but it offers a roadmap. One of the other organizational tools that I heard of recently, because I know a lot of us do use Google Doc, is something called Notion. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but someone on our camp support team, they use it for their camp, and they've been very pleased with it. So just putting it out there. Roadhouse, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add the importance of SOPs, standard operating procedures, or a wiki, handbook, whatever you decide to call it, for succession, and just as an open information database sort. So people always want to know, like, well, what is, the lighting team lead? What does that entail? What's that job description look like? And the more information that you have written down in a public central access place, is really empowering. But in terms of succession, it's kind of like a turnkey guide to how to run the camp. And every camp's going to be different and what that looks like. But and I guess second to that, or maybe above that, would just be, getting everyone up to speed and getting people more engaged in camp. And like I said earlier, the more people know every facet of camp, or at least most, it's just easier to hand the torch off if people get burnout, or life happens, or health happens, or whatever the issue is, which, there's always people that don't return year in, year out, year in, year out. I think it's people kind of get upset or hurt or take it personal. And it's just how it goes. It's just another day in the office being a TCO when your core leadership team decides to go to Bali or something like that year. And then you're like, okay, what do we do? But I find the more experience that I have, the less that it stresses me out. So, and that's just due to having all of that information, in a database or a handbook. Or so, yeah, definitely archive and just maintain all your records. And then, as a team lead comes on and maybe you don't have standard operating procedures or handbook or a wiki, make that part of their job description. Or if there's someone that's maybe really good at compiling data that maybe isn't that person, maybe they can do it for the entire camp. So I think one of the challenges of being a TCO is really finding where people work the best, and ultimately try not to punish people with the lesser jobs if they're not showing up, but it really just tapping into everyone's skill sets and trying to leverage those the best you can on Playa. And it's just a general balancing act, but definitely be mindful, store all your data, make it accessible for folks, and you should have a much easier time with succession and just running camp in general.
Thank you. Love?
I just wanted to add as well, when I was leading the village, I took over that leadership. It's no small thing to step into the role of leadership when someone else has had it. And I was really clear when I stepped into that position. I asked for what I needed. You as a camp lead are allowed to ask for support. They didn't have a camp inventory of all of their gear either. They had a storage unit that was just packed to the brim and no one knew all of the things that were in it. So the very first thing that I did as the new mayor was I made a call to the campers and I said, we need to do an inventory. I, as your camp lead, need to know what we have. We all need to know collectively what we had. And so I gathered a bunch of people at our storage unit. We all got dusty for the day, took some beers and my computer, and I documented everything in a spreadsheet. And that helped me do my job better. And it also helped my camp be engaged with what we had and what we needed. So leaning into it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for support from your campers for the things that you need as a camp lead. You don't have to do everything. You do have to communicate what needs to get done. I think that's one of the big things around boundary holdings as a camp lead is saying, I personally don't want to do everything. I want to have fun too. So I do ask for what I need to have fun. I say, I don't want to have to do everything. Who wants to help with this thing? Who wants to be in charge of this thing? Who wants to help me do it? I think having that that helping mindset really has helped a lot. And then when stepping in, if you're taking over a camp that's existing, or if you're taking on more responsibility within your camp because you're going to be the project lead, or you're asking other people to step up into those roles, support them in identifying what it is that they need to feel confident in that role. If they don't know, help ask those questions. How can I support you? What is it that you need to feel successful? Where would you like to start? Here are my ideas. Talking through that process is I think a really fun part, and it really brings people together. It really builds that investment in the camp.
Nice. Thank you. McButter.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so when Costco came together this last year, one of the things was inventorying our storage unit. So we have a container that's delivered to Playa every year, but none of us live in the same town. Right. And we are international. And I know that's one of the things that came up while we were discussing this, is that not only the very few of us, I say very few of us, live in the same area, but we have people in Canada, the UK, New Zealand, I'm in the Netherlands. Sometimes doing those group things is really hard. And also then sometimes distributing some of the work is both harder and easier, right? Because it can be, some of the online stuff is easier for people to pass time zone to time zone. Whereas some of the other things are more challenging, like we can't have our folks from international places prepaying for anything because we don't know what's going to happen to the currency, right? And there's some really challenging things in that space that we encountered in this last year. Kind of to one thing Love was saying, though, I think I've leaned into this year, not just saying, can you help me with something, but what can you own? I am not going to own everything, right? Because even when I'm saying, can you help me, then I'm still the person primarily in charge, and I just can't be. What I realized last year, I think I took on too much last year as the primary owner. And people saw that and they recognized that, and we're all ready to take, have people own things. Yeah. And so I think it's super exciting to go into this next year, because it's going to be a very different setup.
Yeah, thank you. And I did want to touch on that topic of when your camp is not all located in the same place, because our camp is the same way. We have a very high percentage of people outside the Bay Area, a lot of international people, and this creates a lot of complications. I've always felt that Burning Man is an international event. I mean, you walk down the street, you just hear all these different languages, and it's a miracle to me that people are able to come over, especially if they don't have, a camp. I think about bikes and how complicated that is for people who have international campers. And what we do in our camp is we have on our kind of our original camp list of who's international or who's not in the Bay Area, and then in our task lists we have what are the tasks that are required to be on Playa or in the Bay Area or not at all. And so then we can have lots of opportunities for people who are outside of the country to do different to support the camp year round without being in the Bay Area. But I just wanted to also put that out. I think Roadhouse, you said that you have quite a few international people in your camp. And what are some of the strategies that you use to help? And again, it's not only international, but just people who are not, when you're not all in the same city, it makes such a difference.
Yeah, we're spread out all over the planet. I think last year we had over 16 countries represented, and that's pretty standard for us. And just props and big shout out to everyone who makes that effort to come so far. It's such an added expense, and I honestly don't know how you do it. It's like a 9-hour drive from LA to Reno, and it's fairly easy for me. But anyway, As far as assigning tasks, I mean, again, we are a contribution-based camp and we have a lot of moving parts. So those that are international tend to adopt more planning kind of teams, maybe like meal teams or helping with decor in our frontage or scheduling various things. And then every year we have a handful of our international campers that just want to make it out early for build, which, you know, for me is one of my favorite parts of Burning Man is just that week of build and the intimacy and connection. And you just kind of, last year was a bit of a challenge with some of the weather. And when you kind of experience these things in a small tight knit community, you just, by the time gates open and we're all just exhausted, but with big smiles on our face. And there's nothing more rewarding than seeing brand new campers come into a beautiful space that we've created just for them. And, you know, as an offer to the community at large. So very rewarding. But I would say, you know, if there's people that aren't on the ground that can't do the build, you know, just give them more planning type roles. Anything that they can do beforehand. Don't wait till the last minute to run camp. You can pull it off, but it's just kind of messy. And, you know, it just, the more time you give yourself, the more space you build into your schedule personally and as a group. And it's just, you want to have a nice landing when you hit the playa. So I'd say preparation, organization are absolutely crucial to having a successful burn and mitigating stress and just making it easy for international. So hopefully that helps. I mean, it's tough when you have people coming from all over the planet, but I'll tell you one thing I'm proud of our camp is that a lot of our international crew is like, you know, some of the first for build. So they're some of the first ones on site. And I guess, you know, blessings and fortunate that people have that flexibility in schedules. But short answer is just give people the roles that, you know, require more organization from afar. And I think that's a good utilization of people that maybe can't help or on the ground close to home.
Thank you. Love?
I just wanted to add, my camps have been more locally based. I've been kind of fortunate that way. However, I was really amazed and impressed to find the Burning Man census information is always so fun to read. I highly recommend checking it out. And about 25% of the Burning Man population is international, according to the census on any given year. And when I think of that as a camp lead, that makes me inspired to be like, I want to be able to accommodate and draw in people that aren't just my friends of friends. How can I accommodate that? If I have somebody who's interested in my camp, what do I have in place to support them if they are coming from farther afield? How can I help them be engaged and support their areas of responsibility? Thanks for that, McButter. I loved that call out of like, it's not just helping me, it's like helping you help yourself. How do I help you help yourself? Because you need to be in charge of it. I'm here to help you help yourself, but I don't want to do all the things myself alone. So that is a very important thing to distinguish. Share that load, but build in your own mind. Like if you get an interested person who maybe they move during the year because they used to live close by, but they've relocated. How do you keep them engaged in your camp? Maybe they're friends of friends or a new partner of someone in your camp and they want to join, but they're coming from far afield. If you in your own mind kind of start thinking through that process in your camp of what are the responsibilities those people can take on, you will find people who will take them. You just need to identify what they are. What are all of the things that need to get done? You don't need to do all of those as the lead. Please don't do all of those as the lead. Take care of yourself. But if you've identified them, if you start identifying the roles and the responsibilities, those R&Rs are really important. You can start delegating those tasks out to other people, and then you can help them help themselves, right? Check in with them, see how it's going, allocate resources if they need more support. You don't have to do it all. Please don't do it all. That's the quickest way to burn out as a camp lead. You've got to lean on your campmates. You've got to trust one another. If you trust them, man, do they show up? Ooh, it's so juicy and good.
Thank you. McButter, what do you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add something. I really appreciate what Love was just saying about leaning into people, and they'll return the favor vast majority of the time. But about finding campmates. So I saw there was a question that popped up in chat, and about Ride, and about finding campers. So we've been trying to make a concerted effort to, we lean on our campmates for their friends, friends of friends, people they meet, you know, and they encounter. I ran into someone in London last month whose Instagram name had the word soul in it. She's like probably a perfect match for our camp, right? Just randomly, but also, you know, like trying to go out of just our network, because our network can reflect more of who we look like and our social class and the places we work and things like that. And so we've been making a concerted effort to try and be more diverse in where we're reaching campers. So in terms of posting on Sparks Classified, reaching out to particular groups. I reached out to Burning Man recently to say, how can we get our information about our camp earlier, so that we do have a better representation, both international and regional, for folks. And I just would recommend that. I mean, everyone has to go through the same vetting process. There's no difference there, right? It's about just trying to reach a broader network, right? And I would just really encourage camp leads to do that. We had several folks last year who were not referred by campers, and who I had basically tracked down and stalked and invited to apply. And just such a great fit for our camp. I'm not sure we would have found them otherwise, and it was so wonderful. So I really encourage people to make that extra effort.
Awesome. And one thing that comes to mind when everyone is speaking too is that the importance of letting go to a certain degree of a camp lead. I mean, sometimes we can be a little like into the control a little bit. And it's a really good practice of letting go. And I think, Love, you said, you know, trusting people to do what they're going to do. And you know what? It's Burning Man. If it doesn't, you know, come out perfectly, whatever, we that's one of the reasons I know I keep going back, is it's like, okay, how can I make it better next time? But it's that balance between, you know, having the kind of being at the helm of the ship, but also just letting the ship sail to a certain degree, and letting go. And I think in my conversations that I've had with a lot of camp leads, I do see a little bit of holding on there. And I think that can lead to a lot of burnout, which is actually our next topic. Is, you know, let's talk about camp lead self-care, and, you know, camper self-care for that matter. But I know that it's a big topic in the leadership community of camp lead burnout. So what are your thoughts on how to avoid burnout? What are the signs of burnout? Things that you've done to, you know, to address this?
I'd love to start on this topic. I think that the main thing that I do is check in with myself, but I check in with my leads, again, very regularly. I check in with my campers and see, like, I have my leads check in with their teams regularly. So I should be meeting with my leads once a month. They should be meeting with their teams once a month. And just getting a pulse check on a regular basis to know how people are doing. How are you doing in your life? Are you okay as a human? And then how are you doing on your project in our camp? How is it going? And when, like, emotions start getting high, when people start having more conflict, that's a sign for me that I'm like, more support is needed. Whether it's support for them on an individual basis because their life is having some kind of a challenge, maybe the project is going great. Maybe everything is going perfectly to plan, but maybe their life has something going on that they haven't told us yet, or that they're trying to manage. And that is overwhelming. We're all humans. We're all having a human experience. I want to support the whole human of my camper. And I want to be supported. I want to be able to fail. I want to be able to have downtime. I have time on Playa that is mine. It's not that I'm not available. I've heard some camp leads talk about office hours. I think that's a great idea so that there's clear boundaries around I am available for you during these times of the day or these days of the week. And then the rest of the time is mine. That I've heard a lot of people talk about being a really helpful strategy for boundary holding. So you get that balance of responsibility. And that means that you're trusting other people to be there when you're not involved. And I haven't been as overwhelmed as I've heard other people being, even though I am the lead or the mayor, because I lean really heavily on my team leads. They are responsible for their areas of expertise. I don't have all the answers. I tell everybody that all the time. You can come to me and I will help you find the person that has an answer if you can find me on Playa. But there are other people to go to as well. And making that very clear for everybody in the camp. Again, I have a binder, I have a Google Doc that I print out, and it's got colored pictures of everybody with their names and their areas of expertise. I outline, the different teams so that if you're looking for something about water, you can go find the binder in the kitchen. You can open it to the water section and you can find the people with their pictures who are the leads, who are on that team. So you can know, even if you weren't on the water team, you can have a resource base that you can access. And I count on those people and I trust them. It's an event in the desert. We're doing a thing. You got to trust people and you do have to give up that control, I think, in order to make it sustainable. That's part of why I keep going back year after year. I love that process of trust. It's so juicy. It's so rewarding. And if you want to be in charge of all of it, it's a lot. It's a lot to carry. It's a lot to do. Be kind to yourself. Allow yourself that space to have downtime off Playa, on Playa. Make sure that you're thinking through the whole year. You don't have to lead every meeting. Other people can lead. You can help, you can delegate responsibility and people will step up. And then you can also have a contingency plan for like what happens if they don't.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to mention that we're going to be, McButter, I see your hand. We're going to be going into question and answer time, our slotted time, but a lot of the questions have already been answered in the chat, but I just wanted to put it out there that if you do have any questions, write them in the chat now and we'll get to them. And if there aren't any new questions, we're just going to continue with the conversation. So McButter, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this last year, which was a big transition year for us, was hard for me. And ultimately I learned a lot. And one of the things that I learned is that it's okay to step away from camp and go do your own thing, right? When you've been working on this most of the year, a lot of your campers haven't seen that or don't know that necessarily. And I love Love's idea of making more of the documents visible to camp, because we are pretty transparent, but we're not that transparent yet. But the other thing I'd say is just kind of also what she said, which is, as long as it's not a safety issue, etc., we're like here in the desert to enjoy things and to have a good time, right? And so make sure to not put so much pressure on yourself that you have to solve everything and that it has to be perfect or that things have to go the way you imagine they would be, right? And that one of the things I did this year was there were a couple times when I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna take the day. Everyone knows I'm gonna be gone. There's other people in camp and it was fine. Nobody died. There were no stresses. There's plenty of services. If there's any emergencies, we know where the notebook is, right? I know the people in this call care a lot. They want this to go well, right? And then also, we're camping in the desert for fun. It's not, it's not you're not the CEO of an organization. I don't know. That's kind of my point of view. So.
Go ahead, Roadhouse. And then we have a couple questions after that, it looks like. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I said delegate, right? So it seems like an easy answer, but devil's advocate, what happens if you delegate and everybody that you delegate to is off at bubbles and base at 7 a.m. and you have a massive catastrophe or something? And so one of the ways that we kind of correct this and continue to work on this is signage. So having a book and a binder is great, but using my example where the plumbing failed and it needed a quick remedy, having signage there would have solved that solution very quickly. They don't have to run anywhere else. It's right there on site. It's like, okay, if this happens, turn off the water, right? And then turn off the plumbing, use this T-valve or whatever. So I think, communication, transparency, having as much signage. Last year, we had a lot of people tripping over spider boxes and, my power's out here, power's out here, power's out here. And if you've never handled power out there, it looks really scary and complicated. And obviously consequences are high if you don't do it right. But assuming the system is set up properly, you just kind of follow everything from small back to big. And so this year, for example, we're going to have like laminated cards on each spider box that says, is your power out? Go through these steps to solve your own problem. Because I would say half of my time last year was kind of spent just like tripping breakers or untripping breakers and plugging in cords that people had tripped over, et cetera. So delegate, get a good core of people around you that are on the same page, that care. And then, have enough signage and transparency in all of the problem areas. And you're never going to cover it because whatever you think is good, it'll probably fail at some point. And then obviously, it was said earlier, just don't take it so seriously. It is just Burning Man. Like, I can't find it, but you should see our shade structure from the sky this year. It was just a hot mess, but all you can do is just kind of laugh at it and realize, okay, well, these are things that we need to correct for next year. So go out and have fun. But I will say this, being a TCO is a big responsibility. And if you're not up for that challenge, if you're one of those people that gets easily irritated at people or failure or expectations not being met, it may not be the right task for you. Because you're just gonna, I think Mike Tyson said it best, is like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, and the playa will absolutely punch you in the mouth as a TCO. And the last thing I'll say is that running a camp you think would be relatively simple. You have all the structure, you have systems, you have processes, but what you don't account for is the human experience. And we all have lives and things that are going on in our own lives, and human nature carries those things into the present. And so if someone's being a shithead or, not sorry, but, if someone's acting out or out of character, generally there's something going on in their life that's influencing that behavior. And so I think Lovell have said it, lead with love, lead with compassion, lead with understanding, and just know that you might know everything about camp, but you still have a lot to learn about humans. And you don't have all the right answers because everyone has a different experience. So just try and lead with love and compassion and just be as understanding, and don't take it personal, because most of the time it's really not pointed at you. It's just a byproduct of expression.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I mean, I think it feels like this is a theme through our discussion today is this leading with passion and leading with compassion. But I also want to just point out that it's really important to have our own self-reflection as leads, and wondering, if we are actually the right person to lead a camp. And again, that might require some letting go of what we thought or who we thought we are. So Love, you want to add something? And then I think we have a couple of questions I'd like to get to.
Yeah, I just want to add in this idea too about thinking about how you measure success. What does that mean to you to be successful? The why, right? This all comes back to the why. What is the why for your camp? What is the why for you as a lead? How do you measure your success? Do you measure your success because you built the shower and it worked okay on playa and everybody was able to bathe? Do you measure the success because you have campers who want to return to your camp? Do you measure your success by, how much fun you had as the lead? These are things that I take really seriously about, like, what is the point what are we trying to do? How do we have fun, be part of our measure of success? And does your budget have a success? All of these things. How do you measure success? What's the purpose for you? What makes you want to come back? If you don't hit that goal, next year's always better. We're always here learning and trying. That's the whole point of that phrase. But if you can build in that very guided purpose, it can help lead the conversations when things do fall apart or when things don't go to plan. Bring yourselves back to the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we here? Take some breaths, support each other. Again, we're all having that human experience. It's not going to go to plan. What do you do when it doesn't go to plan? Have some contingency plans in mind. And those also won't also work all the time. So lean into the discomfort of the unknown. That's the whole point, right? We go to this really crazy place to have this really awesome experience because we're looking for the unknown a little bit, right? The planning helps. But you gotta be aware that the unexpected is gonna happen, and that's part of the beauty.
Love it. Yes, love it. Just wanted to say that Cheese has dropped in our feedback form. So before you guys head out, we just have about 4 more minutes and I've got some people leaving. Please, maybe Cheese, you could pop it into the chat one more time. We'd love to get your feedback on our session. There is one question, and I think we have time or there's a couple questions, but one that I can read out here is about, do any of you in the camp or have you used in the past a daily lead on Playa? For example, this person is in charge on Tuesday, so-and-so is in charge on Friday, the person in charge that specific day has to be the soundboard to have all the problems, issues funneled to. Can anyone briefly address that, or does anyone do any your organization in that way?
We at Costco do that for the store. There's always an adult in charge for our theme, our interactivity. We have not done it for camp. We are considering it for this year. So it works pretty well for the store for us to have the adult in charge there to answer questions and do that. So we think about extending it, although we probably wouldn't have one person do all of that. There's just too much during our interactivity.
Okay, great. One other question I thought we could answer quickly is we're hoping to form a mutant vehicle support camp next year, but we're in a geographical area that does not have a Burning Man community at all. Closest burners are a 3-hour car drive. Any suggestions on drawing interest virtually? Anyone have any thoughts about that?
I would say, I have a couple of friends of mine who live farther away that I'm trying to get engaged. Like, please come with me. And my way of handling that is to, again, just offer them opportunities. So saying, this is when our meetings are happening, please join via Zoom. And then making my meetings accommodate the Zoom space as well, checking in with people on Zoom, talking to them, facing them so that they feel engaged, not just the people in the room. And making it clear the things that they can do to be engaged from farther away, right? Can they own some of your documentation? Can they own the budget? Can they own, what process can they own from farther away? And they can help collaborate on that. You can ask them, are there things that you are interested in doing? And if they say, I'm not sure, or I'm new, I don't know, I'm new to your camp, or, newer to the burn and I don't know, you can talk through it with them, give them some ideas and see kind of what sticks, check in with them about how it's going. If it's not going well, change it, give them something else to work on. They don't have to be responsible for the thing the entire time if it's not going well. Some people's personalities and skill sets, wheelhouses fit really well in some things and not as well in others. And check in with them about how that's going if they're trying out something new. Be really intentional about that check-in. I think and listen to them when they're providing that feedback of, I'm having a hard time, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm not sure what to do next. Problem solve that with them. And then also offer it's okay if you need to change responsibilities. And you can do that earlier in the year That's why this planning process helps now. It's harder to accommodate later, but even on Playa, you can say, you know, if you need the day, if you just can't handle it right now, we can support you in having what you need to and have those supports built in.
Great. Thank you. Just also want to say that just for reaching out virtually, there is a burner map, a camp map, and it's in no way is it complete. It's a project that I actually helped to do, and it's on the Burner Network site. And so if you're just looking for camps that might be in your general area, it is based on the 2019 camp list that was submitted through placement. That's how we got all the information. It was already, basically public and allowed, but that is another place to find to reach out to people. Well, we are at time, and I want to thank everybody for all of our participants for joining. I want to thank McButter calling in from the Netherlands, and Roadhouse calling in from Southern California, and Love from the East Bay. And I'm here at Burning Man headquarters today, so really excited to be here. And thank you everybody for participating, and see you out there on the playa, and stay sane. Bye everybody.